meeting to order at 6:41. Let's start by pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move to public comment. Is anyone that would like to make a public comment? Anyone on our screen? No? I'll make a pseudo public comment. Mr. Hawkins, thank you for covering for me last month. Appreciate that. The pressure's on, I hear. All right, let's move to second reading for zoning amendments regarding smoke shop and adult entertainment. Chip, the ball is yours.
Thank you. So if you go through this amendment by amendment, the point of this amendment is to restrict where smoke shops can locate in the city, sort of treat them the same way that we currently treat adult entertainment establishments. And then it adds some restrictions to signs for both of those uses. And also some restrictions to the ability to do anything that might even seem like those two uses as a home occupation or a home industry. The First Amendment establishes the definition for smoke shop, and it's pretty broad. We try to capture nearly every situation you can think of. But also, most places will identify themselves as smoke shops or vape shops, and this definition allows for that to be captured as well. The Second Amendment basically says that smoke shops are only allowed as a conditional use in the service industrial district, which means that they would have to go before the DRB. There's a map at the end. The service industrial district is the orange zone. That's the same district in which we restrict adult entertainment establishments. On the next page, the Third Amendment says that anything resembling or associated with a smoke shop or adult entertainment establishment is prohibited as a home occupation or home industry. And then the Fourth Amendment, which goes on to the next page, limits the signage for a smoke shop or an adult entertainment establishment to 50% of what a business would otherwise be afforded in terms of square footage.
And you were lighting too, Chip.
Yeah, and it's the same amendment. The last thing is, it's really on the last page, second last page. The lighting for signage for these uses shall be limited solely to external illumination, that's sort of shining down on a sign. There can't be any lighting integrated into their signage. And no signage shall flash or be animated.
Is that everything?
That's it.
Anyone have any questions for Chip? I understand in my absence, we had the first reading last month. This is the second reading, which we will take a vote on.
No, move that we close the second reading. Move that we close the hearing for the second reading, move on to number 5.
So motion to close.
Second.
Second by Trudy. So we move, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to consider number 5, consider the adoption.
Motion to approve the zoning amendments for smoke shops and adult entertainment as presented.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Eric. Anyone have any other questions for Chip?
Can other businesses have illuminated signs? So we're just saying that, P through U aren't allowed to, or we're just limiting that to smoke shops.
P through U.
Like on the front page, like soup kitchen, storage facility, transportation facilities.
Oh yeah, that's just
That's where they can go. I
that's
get that.
integrating some of the language that's in that section, and it's because when we inserted smoke shops, we just had to change the letters next to those uses.
Okay.
They're not affected
Yeah,
otherwise.
because the wording
Sign
of the
implies
sign,
they're not.
Sign
because the
implies
wording
they're
of the
not.
sign still says smoke shop
Yeah.
individually on that line. Right?
That's all I have.
Any other questions? Anyone? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Chip, thank you for tackling that, appreciate it. Moving on to item number 6, which is the first reading for zoning amendments for statutory changes and other updates. Chip is on board again.
This is a lengthy one, but your packet starts with a sort of companion document that summarizes each of the amendments. Starting in 2023, the legislature began altering what communities can do with their zoning in terms of controlling density and other aspects related to building housing, parking also being one of them. And they passed a couple laws, one in 2023 and one in 2024, that really sort of short-circuited our ability to control the density of dwelling units on lots. So what we've collected is a group of changes made to state statute that superseded what's in our zoning, and eventually what you need to do is update your zoning with those rules and integrate it into your zoning. And that's quite a task because, well, there's a lot baked into our zoning that has to do with densities and parking. One of the things we did in 2023 is we passed some interim zoning to allow us to crosswalk and provide some guidance between the state changes and our existing zoning. And interim zoning typically lasts for 2 years. If there's any part of it you like, you eventually need to get it into your regular zone. So we have a situation where there's state statutes that we need to integrate into our zoning. We have interim zoning with some new ideas that we've come up with to mitigate some of these issues that we need to get into our zoning. And on top of that, there were some things that staff and the planning commission think that we should update or clarify since we're given the chance to do this. So what we have here are 23 amendments. Some are bigger than others. And in the companion document, which is just the cover sheet, I'm just going to summarize each amendment in turn. And then if you want to look at the actual text, the strikeouts and the underlines, that's further in, and then we can look at that too. So the first amendment is a find and replace. To replace the word family with the word household throughout our zoning. And the reason why we want to do that is the state has basically ruled that our rules cannot favor families or treat unrelated individuals differently. Whether or not you're a family no longer matters. So in order to just get rid of that confusion, what we'd like to do is, it's all about households now. Households are people who live together, they may or may not be related. A family is a household. A few people sharing an apartment is a household. So this would mean that single-family homes would become single household homes and so on and so forth. The second amendment is to replace the name of our lowest density district. We call it the residential 9,500 district because a single-family home requires 9,500 square feet of lot space. With the new state rules, the most we can now require for a single-family home is 8,700 square feet. We have to allow 5 units per acre. So we just want to change the name of the district. The third amendment is everything we're changing in the defined terms. The state rules and some of the other changes we're making require us to add some definitions and fix some definitions, and so this is a catch-all for all of the definition type changes that we're proposing for as part of these amendments. So defining access to property outside the city, because that's something that's going to come up in an amendment that deals with how we deal with that. Congregate housing, the Planning Commission wants to delete that use. We've amended our definitions for development and dwelling units. We've added an emergency shelter because that's now part of state statute. We're deleting family, homeless and homeless shelter. We're sort of altering them to bring in more aspects of state statute for that definition. Hotel, we had to change that because of the state changes. Off-street parking, we want to be really clear about distinguishing off-street parking versus on-street parking, so we added some clarity there. Recovery residence is incorporating state statute being associated with how we deal with those. Green stormwater infrastructure, those 3 stormwater terms. It's going to provide some better direction for how we deal with stormwater and permitting, because the city is going to be building some stormwater. And if it's on a non-right-of-way lot, we do have to provide some direction on how that project is permitted. And this change will basically allow that to ease the path forward for that. Street structure, or we're clarifying some things with streets, for instance. We're just making sure it's really clear that a driveway is not a street, just based on how the definitions have been for a long time in the zoning. And substantial improvement in the flood hazard area, because that term substantial improvement is something that we only use in the special flood hazard area. So we're just making sure in the definition that you're not taking this term substantial improvement and starting to think, oh, am I doing substantial improvement to my house? Well, it doesn't matter. We only deal with that in the flood hazard area. The Fourth Amendment. This is a big one because we have 6 or 7 zoning districts, and we had to go in and change a lot of the density rules. We had to take out congregate housing, we had to add in recovery residence, and we have to repeat that for every single zoning district. So that's the biggest part of the amendments, but it's really just these things repeating over and over again for each district. We're updating our descriptions of childcare based on state statute, adding in the recovery residences. We now must allow 2 and multi-household dwellings as permitted uses in the same way that we allow single household dwellings. That was one of the biggest state changes, and we have to just integrate it into our zoning. Removing congregate housing. We're moving a rule about the number of principal buildings you had, which was buried further in the zoning. We're bringing it into these zoning districts because you're sort of looking for that stuff when you look at each zoning district. Required square footage of lot area, the R87 and the B&T districts are being adjusted to meet the required state density. We have to allow at least 5 units per acre now, so we're integrating that. We're integrating the stormwater treatment as permitted uses, providing some clarity on how we deal with front and rear setbacks when there aren't enough properties next door to create an average. Adding community house to the R75 districts. Prohibiting first floor residential in the center of downtown. And limiting the use of the front yards in this area to commercial or retail only, not for residential use. And then there's this catch-all term called public facility that we are sort of moving only to the service industrial district.
Chip, quick question on the
Yep.
R87, is there a frontage requirement?
In the R87, which is currently called the R95 and used to be called the low density district, the rule is that the front setback is the average of all the properties on 200 feet on either side.
Not setback, but frontage.
Frontage.
It used to be 70
75.
75.
It's 75 for a single family home, and it used to be 100 for anything more. But because of the state rule, we now have to allow 75 for also duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes, because of that state rule that we need to all treat them the same as single family homes now. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about congregate housing? What was the definition being deleted? And what was the definition? Because I think I know what congregate housing is, but
Yeah.
can you tell me? Make sure.
Congregate housing was, it's evolved in how it's been used over time. It used to be a term you used for like assisted living and sober houses and things like that. But those kinds of uses now have their own definitions. And so then we were using congregate housing as a way to regulate, basically it ended up when we regulated when unrelated people wanted to gather together in the same house. But because of that state change that we can no longer discriminate against that type of group,
You don't need congregate.
we don't need it. It's all now just a single family dwelling.
Okay.
Now I should say, and actually I'm glad you bring this up, there are a lot of things the Planning Commission is thinking about are further ways that we might be able to mitigate some of the state's changes. So we can't regulate the density of dwelling units anymore, fine. But can we look at how many bedrooms are allowed on lots? The legislation's silent on that. Can we regulate how many kitchens a house has before we start to say, now look, you're more than a single family unit? The planning commission is having these conversations, but we want to get that, we want to back that up with our city plan update and have that discussion in the city plan. And then after that, be able to come out and say, based on the fact that we have support for that in the city plan, we are now going to look into that, doing that into our zoning. So some things like that, we're going to look at seeing if we can mitigate some of those issues.
And parking, Chip?
State was pretty right across the board on parking. It said, basically, like any municipality before that used to regulate parking by bedroom, can't. Because the statute says you can now only regulate parking as 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. That's the only way you can regulate it. And if it's within a quarter mile of another public parking, you can only require 1 space per dwelling unit. So parking, we really don't have much to work with. What we do now is we're very clear. We say, all right, we define what public parking is. Public parking is not on-street parking. It's if there's a parking garage or a surface parking lot where spaces are made available on a regular basis, right? And it's not closed for winter plowing. And if you say your properties are within a quarter mile of public parking, then it's got to be a lot that's big enough to be adequate for whatever you're trying to build. And if that's all true, then yeah, fine, we'll only require 1 parking space per dwelling unit. But otherwise, we're going to go to the max of 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. That's the way it's written in here. We did that in our interim zoning, and now with this change, we're putting it into the permanent zoning.
Back in time, was sold as congregate housing.
At the time, yeah. But since we're adding community house into that zoning district as part of this change, we'll just be able to switch the use and not put them in any sort of jeopardy.
One more question.
Yep.
I'm just looking at number 11.
She's jumping ahead on it.
Okay.
Oh, did you not?
I like
Sorry,
jumping ahead.
If there are places that do have first floor residential in the downtown area, are there ways that we could limit that front yard use?
Yeah.
Pending, based on number 11?
You mean Amendment 11?
No, Amendment 4.
Yeah.
Oh, Amendment 4, number 11.
So here's the background behind that change. This is focused on the streetscape block areas of downtown, where the storefronts are right next to each other, right? And it's supposed to be very dense, and it's supposed to be very pedestrian oriented, and it's always been historically retail and commercial on the first floor, right? And these storefronts are really exposed to whatever might happen on the street, but they're also really exposed to, like, if someone starts having parties, if one of these buildings is set back, and there are a few that are, there's one down here, there's one down at the bottom of Kingman Street, and people start hanging out and treating it as their living room, that's not really what the historical use of these spaces was. And this change would say, that's not just the first floor that we want to be retail and commercial, it's also that space out front. If your building is set back from the right of way, and you have this private space in the front, if you want to use it for a commercial or retail display, if you want to put up some nice landscaping, something that fits the commercial use of that first floor, what should be commercial, then that's fine. But it's not going to become a living room. And so that's what that change says. And we'll see how far we can go with it. Amendment 5. We have this summary table of section 304 that helps you. The summary table would just be updated with whatever change was made in the previous amendment. It's sort of a primer table to have. Amendment 6. We have to integrate some allowances for affordable housing development. So this creates section 306 to do that. There's a density bonus and an additional floor that we now have to allow for an affordable housing development. There's nothing we can do about it.
More than what we already done?
Right. Yeah, it's in state statute. We now have to do that. Amendment 7 takes this section called public facilities that has a bunch of limitations on how much we can regulate them. And what we're doing is we're taking everything that has to do with exemptions or limitations and we're putting them all in the same section way out in Article 9, where we talk about what you need a permit for. So that'll be where you go. It'll be the only place that really talks about exemptions and limitations. So we're just consolidating all that. Now, section 410 will then be reused. What we're going to do is insert a section called the new language on how we regulate properties that are used to access property outside the city. Well, what do we do with properties where the city and town boundary line cross right through the property? So what this is going to allow us to do is say there's a property on a city street, and then someone owns a property that's how you connect to a property in the town. And someone wants to do something with that property in the town. But they have to use the property in the city to get there. Well, that's kind of a use. That's a use of the property in the city to get to the property in the town. And what you're allowed to do as you go back and forth, accessing the city street network on this city property next to all of its city neighbors, should kind of mirror the zoning district. Like if you have a residential neighborhood and it just happens to border some, I don't know, industrial town zone, and someone says, well, we're going to use that city lot to get to the industrial town zone, this will allow us to say, well, hold on. Like, no, if you want to access this industrial lot, you can find another way to get there, but you're not going through this city neighborhood to do it. And so what it will allow us to say is that if you want to use the property in the city to access this other property, then we're going to regulate it as if it's in the neighborhood zoning district where it enters the city street network. So things like, we're not going to allow you to access it to do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do in the city zone. This doesn't come off very often, but there have been a few cases where we're like, boy, this could have gone south, or we don't have much to work with to really maintain the character of the city neighborhood.
But it's not impacted housing to housing. So you got housing, use a city lot.
Right, like if it's the same use as what you would otherwise be allowed to do in the city zone, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
But it also helps us figure out, like when you have a lot that's straddles the city-town line, it gets really weird. It's like, wait, where are the do we have a setback against the property or the political boundary, or do we not? So this rule also has some similar rules about just how you navigate that situation. Amendment 8 takes out, it's going to move the limitations on farming and forestry and move that to Article 9, and then it's going to reuse Section 411 to provide guidance on the regulation of stormwater treatment. Which on the next page, top of the next page, you can see we're going to allow anyone to implement green stormwater infrastructure to treat the stormwater on their lawn. We'll treat it like landscaping. We will allow it in the front and side and rear setbacks the same way we do a garden. In that accessory structures associated with stormwater treatment shall be subject to the regulations. Stormwater treatment shall only require site plan review if it would alter structures or parking, just like anything else that would trigger site plan review. What this does is it paves the way for the city to have, it paves the way for people to do accessory stormwater treatment, like if they want to treat the stormwater on their property. And then it also allows the city to do municipal stormwater treatment for things like what we're planning to do at 74 Lower Weldon or at the Houghton Park CSO project. Amendment 9 is we're removing a section of our nonconformities section that really is redundant with some other rules having to do with plan unit developments. Article 4, we're changing the name of the plan unit development rule to the transitional lot development rule because the city really doesn't need some of the aspects of planned unit development that your more rural and agricultural towns do. But we are gonna use the parts that allow you to come to the DRB to maybe have something that's a little more dense, or maybe like if your lot borders a business district and they're able to build up closer to the side setback, it would allow you to also build up to that distance on the side setback bordering that district. And it allows those lots that are right on the border of another zoning district to become more transitional between the zoning districts. So we're just calling it transitional. Amendment 5, there's a rule that if someone has a lot that's too small to otherwise build on, it's called the existing small lot rule, and it basically says that even though the lot's too small, you can still build something that's allowed in the zoning district on it. And that made a lot of sense before the state said, oh, by the way, you can build a quadplex or you can build a single family home, which I don't think the intent of the existing small lot rule was to force through something like that. So we're going back through and specifying that you can use the existing small lot rule on a lot that is truly undeveloped. Like there's nothing there. Like this lot does need a chance to be developed, there's nothing on it, then you can use the existing small lot rule. But if there's already a house or something on it, then that's what you get to do. It doesn't allow you to use the existing small lot rule to turn a duplex into a quadplex.
So if you have a double lot, you get your lot subdivided, then you could do that on the other part of your lot if it fit in the square footage?
No, it would be more like if you just happen to own a lot that was all by itself and it happened to be too small.
Okay.
If you own 2 lots and if you were going to subdivide a new lot, the only way you'd be able to do it is if that lot was subdivided to conform with today's rules, and it was subdivided to be large enough for development under the rules. Amendment 12. There's this rule that was way out in section 503 about whether or not you could have more than one principal building on a lot. And we're eliminating that because we put that into the section 303, which had all the zoning districts. So now for each zoning district, there's a section that says whether or not you could have more than one principal building in this district. Amendment 13. This is integrating the state's parking changes about what we can only, for residential development, by the way, residential development, we can only require 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, and we can only require 1 if the development is within a quarter mile of adequate public parking. So this inserts that into our minimum parking table. Amendment 14 basically says that you cannot tack a fire escape onto the facade of a building. And you, if you're going to build a fire refuge, which is one of those balconies that you'll sometimes see out there, that it has to eventually be integrated into the color scheme of the facade. Now this is kind of tough, because if someone wants to turn a historic home into a triplex and they have to meet the public safety code, there might be a bedroom up there, and maybe they're supposed to provide egress or a fire escape to do it. And we're kind of drawing a line in the sand and saying, look, that's a historic home. You can put a fire escape on the side or the back, but you cannot put a pressure-treated fire escape on the front of a historic home in the city of St. Albans. You can't do it. And if it's going to mean you can't develop that house the way you want to, then you're going to have to figure out another solution. And maybe the fire refuges will be a good option anyway. Amendment 15. Now this was part of our interim zoning that I'd like to integrate in, and it basically eliminates the specter of speculative parking lot development in the city that might reduce property values and hurt our TIF district. It basically says that if a building's going to be torn down for a parking lot, that only the city can do it. Amendment 16. There are a bunch of rules now, limits from state statute on how much a DRB can reduce the development as conditions, like saying, yeah, we'll approve this multifamily housing, but we'll only approve 2 less units than what you originally proposed. And the legislature said that DRBs cannot do that anymore. So we're putting a bunch of limits on the conditions that they can attach to conditional use review and site plan review.
Chip, can I go back to the parking demolition?
Yeah.
So if I wanted to sell my building on Stephen Street to BFA, to utilize the 24 spots I have and my building for parking by demolishing it, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Under this rule, you would not be able to do that.
I don't like this rule. That means that any business who wants to increase their parking because they don't have a lot of parking by buying a neighboring lot to tear that down so they can have parking for their business, they're not able to do it. Should this, I mean, I would feel better if this was under like a, not a direct denial, but had to go through a process, like a conditional use process, unless otherwise granted by the council or unless otherwise granted by the city manager. You know, is there a way to have someone look at it? Because I think that in some instances this is bad, but in some instances it's good.
Mhm.
It should be one of the ones where there's not a direct denial for it, but someone taking a look at it, other than the biased person who wants to do it, and the unbiased person who doesn't want to do it, and say, hey, wait a minute, this is a practical use of this, and it benefits everybody, we're gonna allow it, like a conditional use.
Because I can see the value of the rule too, because the Passporos decides to stay and take up 2 blocks next to them
Yeah.
to put parking in. Now we've got parking on Main Street, so yeah, I'm agreed.
Do you know that when I bought my building on 7th Street, sorry, I'm not using that as a bias, but when I bought my building, one of the conditions was that if the post office knocked down the Boudreaux building and wanted to use my building for parking, and buy my building for parking, I had to give a percentage of that to the person I bought it from, which was our deal. But was within 10 years, but, you know what I mean, I'm just saying. But that's, you're putting something in play that now, I can't use that when I go to sell my building now. And for me, in the downtown district, parking is key here.
Mhm.
Like in New York City and Burlington and everywhere else. And the value of our buildings is what we can offer other businesses or industries that are in the core of the downtown. And you're taking that away by putting this, is this a state mandate or is this a city mandate?
This was a reaction to the fear that the increased residential development and removing our ability to control it through density.
Well, why can't
It would
we
lead to-
limit it to just the residential districts and not the downtown district then? Or the B2 transitional district, we don't limit it, we keep the B1s and B2s out of this and we put everyone else in play. I would be okay with that.
Yeah, this right now does, yeah.
But you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, we'll take a look at it, something that's more case, context-based.
Design your way to a better project. The fear was speculative demolishment of buildings that were creating value and now we're just gonna be parking.
Yeah.
And your point's well taken, that you could have way more development if you allow this.
Or keeping someone there who wants to be there but can't do it because they're under a parking limitation.
I think your building makes more sense, but you definitely don't want to see like a downtown building torn down.
That's
Just
what I
put
was
parking.
Yeah, that's
It's
why
a
if there's
case by case.
yeah, I agree with that. Like a case, some kind of review process, so there's not just a direct denial of it.
Well, I think, why don't I see?
PTC down the KSC on Kingman Street
Yeah.
for parking.
And it would, like, if the gas station next to BFA wanted to increase parking for the high school, they wouldn't be able to do that under this.
Correct. Unless the city did it.
Or the ballet center want to utilize the storage facility that's on the other side right before the catering spot and knock that down for extra parking, they would be able to do it.
Why don't we'll take a look at it and bring it back.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do is come up with a more kind of context-based review approach, maybe linked to our design review rules on demolition of buildings. If I can't find something that works before our second reading, then we'll just take it out and we'll deal with it later.
Okay. I see where this has merit in a lot of spots, but it could be detrimental to other things, so.
Yeah. Amendment 16, we already talked about that, limits DRB decisions. Amendment 17 clarifies that, that a design, when someone comes before the design advisory board, they're really making an administrative decision that the zoning administrator is going to carry out. And this sort of, Amendment 17 and 18 and 19 are sort of explaining that that's what's happening, and also that when the DAB doesn't act in time, it's as if the ZA didn't act in time. It's some procedural stuff, but it wasn't really clearly laid out in Article 7 that deals with design review. Amendment 20 removes a public safety exemption from design review, and we're actually putting it over in Article 9 so that it sort of applies to all permitting situations. With a caveat, and we'll go over that. Amendment 21. So this amendment consolidates a lot of the exemptions and limitations and puts it all in one section. Exempt from permitting would be work in the city or state right-of-way, any boundary adjustments created by changes to city or state right-of-way, and then, which basically says, like, if the city declares a public highway, it doesn't mean that the properties have to also get a permit for a boundary line adjustment. It's like the city's changing the boundaries, and you don't need to also get a permit for it. And then also, accessory structures that are less than 36 square feet in footprint or less than 6 feet in height, they won't need to come in for a permit, but if that property is ever reviewed, all of these accessory structures will have to be found to be following the rules. So you could still have a violation if your chicken coop is too close to your neighbor, but you don't have to get a permit for every single chicken coop that might happen in the city. Emergency work for an imminent situation of public safety. This allows for any emergency work that's ordered, say by Matt Mulheron, to be done immediately, and then Sarah Bennett would follow up on what they need to do to permit it permanently. Maybe it needs to be adjusted, for instance, but some of that paperwork stuff would be handled after the imminent event.
So I think that's a conversation John and I had. High winds, guy lost part of his roof, replaced it, but needed to get a permit. I think if it's weather related and you just repairing it, similar to what you're saying here, I don't think, I agree with the follow-up. I don't know that they have to go through the permitting process to replace or to repair a roof or a deck or a porch, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, agreed.
Is that sort of, can that fall under that a little bit?
Well, this would mean they wouldn't immediately be in any jeopardy of needing a permit. They could work it out with Sarah on what was an emergency and what might have required a permit if it hadn't been an emergency.
Can't you always put something back to the way it was if you're either repair or replacing it? If that window breaks over there, can I put a window there that's the same way, the same design, without having to come here and get a permit?
Yeah, that's maintenance.
Yeah. So wouldn't that be maintenance by fixing a roof? It would
Right now, if someone replaces their entire roof, we've been requiring a permit.
But they're doing that, well,
No, the situation that I'm referring to, the individual, it was cheaper for him to put on a metal roof than it was to redo the shingles.
oh, yeah.
And that wasn't acceptable.
It was not acceptable?
He had to get a permit and apply for a permit to do that.
Well, all you have to do is get a permit, you don't have to go in front of a board or anything.
Yeah, but just,
I have to pay for it.
And there's a fee associated with it, right? Do I remember that right?
Yes.
I don't remember.
yeah, there would have been.
Yeah, so he was complaining about the fee.
Oh, I got you.
He was repairing the,
Okay.
I don't know, we would have just forgiven the fee. Permits are useful in that situation because they help us track major changes to property that might affect the value when we do assessing. So we can deal with that in other ways, especially if the fee is the only hang-up.
right.
Right. Amendment 21, oh wait, we're still on that. So we basically put in all of the limitations on various different protected classes in state statute into this section as well. Electric generation, public facilities, farming, forestry, all that stuff. Amendment 22 There's a 100-day timeline for the DRB to warn a hearing that comes from state statute, so we're just inserting that into our procedures with Amendment 22. And then Amendment 23 is the last one, and it just clears up some areas where the zoning map doesn't quite make sense. There are a couple neighborhoods on Locke Terrace and on Savage Street where some of the house properties are technically in the service industrial district, which does not make sense. So we are asking to rezone those to the R75 district or the R87 district. And then 100 to 120 Federal Street, which is the lot we're redeveloping down here. It just makes things a little simpler by rezoning the whole thing as just central business district and not splitting it down the middle. And that's it.
Can I go back to Amendment 22?
Yeah.
Was that put in, because the essence is, if there was someone who wanted to get something done and needed to go under DRB, and the zoning administrator failed to get it on the DRB agenda within 45 days, it was deemed approved. Now it's 120 days?
No, that was, that's the rule for how long the DRB has to issue a decision to close a hearing, 45 days. Apparently there are some towns that were just taking forever for the DRB to actually have a hearing. And it got to the point where the legislature thought they had to make a fix. This has never happened in the city.
Okay.
Like, if you bring in an application to Sarah, you're getting your DRB hearing on their schedule at their next meeting.
Right.
But I guess there are some towns that were just,
Yeah,
Not even
and I'm
one
just
thing.
trying to get clarification on
Right.
what this means.
Yeah, right.
This is just saying
it's crazy.
120 days
Yeah.
is deemed approved then?
No, 120, maybe,
Okay,
it might be, but
because that's good
you know,
information
even
for me.
through, you still have to go to the environmental court anyway. But, we've never gone that long.
Yeah.
We never will go that long before we have our DRB hearing, but we have to insert it into the zoning because it's a state change. Yeah.
The number 3, the 23, you were saying even at Elso it's not splitting down the middle of the road, but when we do that, doesn't that include DFA then? Or is that?
Where are you at?
Before that, the amendment 23, I'm sorry, talking about 100, 120 federal, I don't know where that falls. Where's 120 end?
100 to 120, because there used to be multiple lots, and now it's one big development lot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so this only affects the city lot. DFA would still be in the service industrial.
This is at the end of Hudson Street?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Chip, most of the 23 amendments are being funneled down from the state,
yeah.
the majority of them. Is this, do we expect this to be a continued year-to-year address, state telling us what to do?
My gosh, I hope not,
Yeah.
because,
Can you
yeah.
bill them for some of his time?
Well, the state is trying to get more people in here,
Right, no, I get it.
and at our detriment.
Right, no doubt.
And that's what's happening, and we're trying to, through CHIP, hopefully, is trying to say, yeah, okay, well, you did, but I got a feeling they're gonna say, oh, well, St. Albans is doing this, let's now change it so that St. Albans can't do that. And that's what I think is gonna happen. This is as a result of us walking around the,
Right,
we walked
Yeah.
our tour around the,
Playing defense.
yeah, and said, look, this is what a potential lot could look like, in my ward especially. And like, we don't wanna see that stuff up there.
Playing defense is a good
Yeah.
statement.
Yeah.
One last thing
Thanks
that
for
I
doing
had.
that, by the way.
Amendment 1, we talked about family versus household. Where does room rental come into play on that? I've got a Victorian mansion, I've got 8 bedrooms. Can I rent rooms and be a household?
People are doing that too recently.
that's a number trying to figure out how to crack. I mean, I'll leave it at that. If you say you're operating a lodging house, then we'll zone you as a lodging house, and you'll have to, maybe you won't get approved, but, I'm working with Matt Mulheron about how some of the building codes define boarding house, and there might be some things that we can use to regulate that, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay, we'll leave that. Anyone else have any other questions for Chip? Keep in mind, this is the first reading, as Chip had shared with us, each amendment goes into more depth in the back of it. If you can read up on that before the second reading, that would be great. And we'll move on to next item.
If I can just add one thing,
Yep.
that Our city plan is likely to expire before we can re-adopt it. The planning commission put a lot of work into it over the past year or so. We're finally getting back to that. We're gonna rewrite the plan, but we're not going to be able to do any zoning updates in the interim. So there is some urgency in passing this now while we can, or any other changes we wanna make.
You're
So,
saying now being within a month?
before August 14th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Chip. Let's move on to item number 7, adoption of national incident management system and local emergency management plan.
Chief of Police has presented this to us. It's the annual update of the local emergency management plan. It also says that we need to certify that we're adopting the national incident management system, which is what the police department uses. To present it to the city council so that Tom can certify that you adopted it.
I have a question on this, not to throw a wrench anything, but this list is not updated.
What list are you talking
The
about?
contact, we're on this page.
Yeah, the front page.
What page are you on?
I'm just looking at all of the contact information, like page 7 and 8.
And which ones are you looking
So,
at?
this is where my other job comes into play. Like, community action and CBOA are listed twice, which doesn't really matter, but, where is it? Almond Blossoms is no longer in business. Almond Blossoms Child Care Center.
Yeah, it's a different name.
It's a Little Tots Academy. And I don't believe this is all of the active registered and licensed child care centers.
Would you be willing to send that list? Because perhaps the council could just adopt it contingent upon those
Yeah.
corrections.
And those change, you know?
Yeah, right.
So-
So it's a point in time.
Yeah.
Of the King's residence, King's Daughters is gone. That's
I was
all.
gonna say, I thought that was too. More
So-
important to make sure that we have all of the places on there.
How do you know what they are, Lindsay?
My day job is at NCSS and the Parent Child Center.
Okay,
That's what we do,
okay.
yeah.
All right, so we'll, you're gonna make the corrections, Lindsay, and get them to Chip?
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions for Chip? Other than that? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the emergency management plan contingent on some updates relative to contacts. I'll do it. Motion from Tim, is there a second?
I'll second.
Now, is there any other questions for Chip on this? This is a yearly approval?
And that's subject to
Yes.
the
to the-
updates by Lindsay.
Yes.
Or anyone else? If you see something.
I can get you a list of all the registered, if that's helpful. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Then we have a new street to name, and that is the extension off Federal Street that goes out to the dispatch center on the former Fonda site. The proposed new name is Federal Street Extension.
We tried to be
Creative.
clever and commemorative, but E911 shot us down, so
Oh, they
now we're
did?
just going to boring extension,
Question,
Federal Street Extension.
out of curiosity, because Federal Street, yeah, it starts over at Lake, but because it crosses, we can't keep it named just Federal Street and keep numbering out from there.
There are a couple reasons why. The first one is, Federal Street is probably going to remain a Class 2 road.
Okay.
This is gonna be like, it's not gonna be Class 2, Class 3 maybe, so I don't know if it messes up the highway numbering. And the other thing is because E911 and the way they address things, that if we kept it as Federal Street, they would assign us addresses for the workforce housing and ARDC based on their new formula, which is
It's mileage based.
one address every 10 feet from Lake Street.
Yeah.
So that'd be like 2,000 Federal Street or something.
Yeah.
Really,
It would be.
it's excessive. But if we call it Federal Street Extension, the address it can start from Lower Newton and not be quite as high. It's still gonna be quite high, it's gonna be kind of weird.
The only reason I ask, and this is coming from my having been 10 years in EMS, I hated extensions, circles, and all the other names that they added on only because when people called in, they're like, oh my God, I'm at 12 Federal Street. And EMS is showing up at 12 Federal Street. But no, it's 12 Federal Street Extension, but 911 listen doesn't know that, they're just saying they're 12 Federal Street.
Well, I
That's
asked,
the only reason I brought it up.
I know, I asked E911 and both of the chiefs about it, and they said it was okay. So,
In the meantime, Eric wants to change Thorpe Avenue and Thorpe Avenue Extension as well.
right.
And what was it, east and west Stanley Court?
Yeah, we ended up budgeting that one.
All right, any other questions for Chip on renaming, or naming, not renaming? Entertain a motion? What do you want this on?
I will make a motion to name Federal Street Extension.
I'll second that.
Motion with Judy, second by Eric. Any further questions for Chip? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Chip. Now, Chip, do you want to present vacancies?
Historic Preservation Commission, we have two dedicated members who are expiring at the end of the month, Richard Stahl and Joe Luna. They're both willing to be reappointed. So just wondering if you'd entertain giving them another 3 years.
Motion to approve the appointments of Joe Luna and Richard Stahl to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Second.
For the terms allotted.
We have a motion from Tim, seconded by Chad. Any questions for Chip? Hearing none, all those in favor of appointing Richard and Joe, say aye.
Aye.
I would like, anyone opposed? Motion passes. I'd like to thank Joe and Richard for their time on that. I think they've been on it since it was first established. So thank them for their dedication to those positions. Now we'll move on to Northwest Solid Waste appointment.
Trudy, myself, and Lindsay interviewed, did the
Yes.
interview on that one.
Yes.
Here with Mike Mannigan. Thought he was a qualified candidate, had a good disposition on what needs to be done, and wants to keep the council informed as to what goes on with the NCS or NSWD, which we don't hear about very often. We're kind of encouraged about the things that he said.
Okay. Is that a motion?
So I'll make a motion to appoint Mike Mannigan to the Northwest Solid Waste District as the San Albans City representative.
I'll second.
Motion from Tim, seconded by Trudy. Any other questions or comments regarding Mike? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Mike is now part of the Northwest Solid Waste. I think that spot had been vacant for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank Mike for stepping up and doing that as well. I think Solid Waste has a lot of changes coming down the pike, I think. For me, moving on, committee appointments, not that we have a lot, but moving forward, the Public Safety and Quality of Life Committee, I would appoint Trudy Coffey as a chair, Marie Bissett, and Lindsay Hung as part of that committee. Are you accepting as chair?
Sure.
Okay. Finance Committee is Councilman Hawkins, Councilman Boudreau, and Councilman Johnson as on the Finance Committee. So I don't think I need a vote. We're good to go. Tim, you're good to be chair again?
Yep.
Thank you and Trudy for taking the lead on both of those. I appreciate that. Council report, mayor's report, a couple quick things for me. I've had people comment about the closed bins at Food City, and I think they're at Scratch or the former Hometown Beverage. People comment that the business that does that actually sells the clothes and makes money at some point, which I don't have a problem with. If it's deferring it from going into the dump. But I did get their annual report. St. Albans, it seems low. I thought I saw a higher number. I was just looking for it. But St. Albans contributed just about 3,500 pounds of clothing, which I thought was low. So 1.68 tonnage. Vermont as a whole contributed almost 1,600 tons of clothes. So they go through them, they get shipped to Hooks in New Hampshire, and then ultimately to Texas, and then they sell off or use it for, so there's if anyone wants to look at this, you're more than welcome to. I think it's pretty interesting. 2 veterans, father and son, formulated that, and so you'll see those bins all around. And, so I thought that was interesting. Marty, I think I've seen GMP has been in town trimming trees again.
They're contracting.
It's disturbing to me to see how bad our trees get hacked up. I don't know if anyone else notices that.
Every day I notice it.
It's annoying as hell. When I first became mayor, we met with GMP, and you can tell folks if they ask about it that the company comes in and they cut the trees to restrict 7 years of growth. So they cut the trees back so that none of those branches will interfere with the wires in the next 7 years. So they'll be back in another 7 years to cut those back. I think it is excessive on how much is cut. We talked about, Don, if you remember, 7 years ago, we talked about cutting them for 3 years or 5 years. And GMP didn't go too far. But if people ask and you look at the condition of our greenway trees of the green space, it's ridiculous what they've done to some of these trees. I look at Jeff Road, he has some nice flowering, and those things just got.
And they look like a U.
Yeah, big U.
Half the tree is U. And that's a lot, because I walk up Ward 1 every day, 4 miles. And it's,
Yeah, it's ridiculous how bad, and I don't know, that's a conversation we want to revisit. We're probably too late. Are they done, Marty?
Yeah, they're done in the city.
Yeah. It's sad in my opinion, but.
I've had conversations with them, with representatives from Green Mountain Power. The mess they have left in the road and in the green belts. I threatened to issue a cease and desist against the tree company, and they trimmed one tree on High Street, literally trimmed every branch off the tree and left the trunk there.
Yeah. And they were, an agreement we made 7 years ago was they're supposed to notify us when we were in the city, and I don't know if that's happening.
I think it got a lot worse than Mary left.
We may want to send a letter or follow up. It's too little, too late, but it's annoying.
And ordinance we put in place to restrict them, to require them to get permit to do the cutting?
Probably could.
I don't know, because it's in there right away.
Well,
It's all right.
yeah, we might have a recourse.
Can we check on, even if we charge them for permits and invested in new trees or whatever the case might be. Yeah. Green up, the weather wasn't ideal, but I think everyone all the council people participated. Thank you for that. It worked out well. Marty, I don't know how much you picked up, but.
Actually, roughly a truckload, 1 ton load, which was less than what we had in the past.
Yeah, it was less turnout. But we also had, we had companies go out, Brock's went out, some couple town school and city school, both went in the city, did some cleanup as well, so. And then just lastly, Marty Park looks good after the festival, and you sort of recoup. But I think the park looks real well, so. We'll go around. Tim?
I had some concerns on the appearance of the shopping center, and I've already talked to Marty about it. I'm all set.
No, it's not where their fences are leaning and whatnot. Trudy?
Cayman Fest was fun. That was this past weekend, so thanks to Lauren and Shannon from Nellie's for pulling that together, and the weather cleared right at 5 o'clock, like when it started. It was pretty cool. Heather Kelly's also starting her green ups on Sunday mornings if people want to continue to pick up trash in the city. That would be great. I've noticed on the interstate heading to work that the state police seem to be upping their traffic enforcement on the interstate. And it would be great if there was a way, if our PD had the ability to do that in the city.
Yeah.
For the loud burnouts, speeding, just, I've noticed a change on the interstate since the police have been pulling people over. All it takes is seeing a couple of people pulled over and then people slow down a little bit. So, just a thought. And my last thing, is there a way to change, I get that we don't want a lot of people congregating in the gazebo in the park, but can we get like a nice black fence instead of the orange? Can we explore something different that doesn't look so yucky? Because the park looks great.
Fences are going away,
Okay,
and we're lighting back out of it.
okay.
And there'll be a new sign that says, "Welcome to St. Albans." 1 hour then.
Okay.
Downloading or redoing spot again?
It's above my pay grade, but we're lighting the heck out of it.
Maybe
At
we
night.
could add on the sign, alcohol and drug-free zone.
So how much was your ticket?
I didn't get a ticket. I didn't get a ticket because I go after the people that are going really fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else, Rudy?
No.
All right, Eric?
It's reflecting the same with the traffic. It seems like 9:30, 9:50 every night. We've got the racers that go up and down Main and Fairfield Street. I am addressing with the schools a couple of individual students parking on Lincoln that decided to burn up rug in Ferris Street every day at lunch. So they're looking into that as well. We have our block party on the 12th of July, 12 to 3, music, burgers, dogs. We're working on a pie eating contest possibly, pie making contest, we're not sure yet. And the other thing I had a question on was, you mentioned the park. Do we have any bids on the stumps yet? I'm just curious, as far as artwork or whatever.
We got one.
That's it?
That's all I have.
Lindsay, we'll go to you.
A couple of meetings ago, Trudy brought up, maybe it was last meeting, mattresses and things just being left on street corners. And there's one right near my house, and I was like, I would love to revisit that chat, because I think it's more complex than people make it is, like we were discussing last time. I had someone reach out to me.
Can you hold 1 second?
Yeah.
Marty, what do we do in that case?
So if we see it, we send them a letter, and they've got to remove it. If they don't remove it, they get fined and get charged if we end up removing it. So if you see one, let us know.
Okay.
It may be one we've already sent a letter to, but
Okay. It's
if
been
not-
a few weeks, so probably.
No one wants to use mattress, people, especially if you live on the street. Like,
We're on the rain.
public service announcement, no one wants to use.
Couches and recliners too, please.
I'm not defending it.
Something can sit there.
Yeah.
how long can it sit there? They've got to remove it immediately when they receive the letter. So as soon as we see it, we send out a letter within a day, and it's got to be removed or it gets fined. I think the fine starts after 7 days, so.
Tim, can you put something in your mayor's report about free piles? I love a good free pile, but not, it can't stay out for forever.
Right.
You really love mine.
I do, but it's recycling, but I don't leave it out in the rain, I don't leave it out for days and days, so maybe if you put that, I think people do read your little letters. Start off your letter.
Appreciate that. Just a little one, they only read the little one.
They read it, there's good information.
Can you put Trudy's address in that letter and they'll drop people,
She likes free
drop
stuff.
things off?
No,
Yeah.
I give free
I just want to go back to the mattresses quickly. People won't take a mattress on the corner that presumably 1 or 2 people slept on. But people will pay $200 to sleep on a mattress that thousands of people slept on in a hotel.
Yeah, but those aren't left on the side of the street in the rain.
Well, I'm just saying. All right, Lindsay, anything else?
Yes, I have a couple of things that might be directed toward Fifth. Someone reached out to me that there's a person who's regularly parking at the end of Russell Street onto Lake, and that it makes it really hard to see when they're pulling out because it's a little bit of an angle. And I drove past there, and it looks like before Russell Street, that's church parking, but then on the other side of it, it looks like it's just a bike lane. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you're not supposed to park in the bike lane.
Yeah, so what do I do about that?
Isn't there also a sign, no parking here at the corner?
Are they parking on Russell or on Lake?
They're parking on Lake,
Oh,
In the bike
in
lane?
the bike lane.
Oh, that should be ticketed.
Okay,
Yeah.
Here?
so I'll just tell them to reach out.
Call dispatch.
Okay,
Right.
perfect.
Yeah.
And then another person reached out to me and said that the city map is online, is it updated? Is that, they said that they had reached out to us.
Is that Melissa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well.
It's like updated one.
It's about whether or not
place.
Adam Street's on the map, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we updated it for the one that's presented in the clerk's office when they vote, and we'll make sure it's updated
On the website.
on the website too.
That
I
one.
thought it was, but I'll double check.
Okay, perfect. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the speed bumps on Adams Street, on the, next to the T-ball fields. Right? Is that the right street?
Aldous.
Aldous, sorry. Oh,
Yeah, those make a difference.
yeah,
Especially with the kids there.
Yeah, those are there for Little League
yeah.
season, so.
No, I definitely appreciate them. That's all I know.
Thank you, Lindsay. Marie?
Somebody in my neighborhood watch group posted that he was up at 3 a.m. and saw 3 police officers doing foot patrol through our neighborhood. So I felt really good about that. I hope that's something that they are continuously doing, if they can, but I think that's really effective.
Were they walking or running?
Once they saw him, they probably started running, but no, no, he's a great guy. But they were walking, and just their presence, I think, makes a big difference. So I too have not noticed in the night quite so many people wandering around as I have in, of course, I just started opening my window, but yeah, it seems to be better currently at the moment, so I hope it stays that way. Green Up Day, I was lucky to have a couple of people stop, which was 2 more than I had last year, so that worked out good. And really nice folks that were, one lady had her kids with her, and she was all gung-ho about it, so that was a good feeling. Has anybody else heard this motorcycle, I think it's a motorcycle, that goes through the city all over the place, all night long? I've heard it in the wee hours of the morning, I've heard it before midnight, I've heard it after midnight. And somebody approached me on it. What's going on? Can't they catch this guy, or what's happening with that? So I don't know if anybody wants to touch base with the police department and see if anything's been done about that, but it's like every night.
It wouldn't be that hard to
He
find those people.
messes around in front of the police station. That's like one of his favorite.
Oh,
But his bike is very loud.
Oh.
And he likes to go back and forth in front of the police station.
And you can tell where he is all through the city.
Oh, yeah, going down Main Street.
He was there
Yeah.
last summer.
Yeah.
He likes to turn around at South Main and he's around right in front of the police station.
Yeah.
Is he speeding and being reckless, or is it just
Oh, yeah.
loud?
Yeah, he's been on the sidewalk before.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so yes.
Always the
Maybe
above,
done
yeah.
quite a little bit of that.
So if it's something that can be done about that, I think I'd like to see something done about that. It's an annoyance. I mean, he went by my house one night and woke me right up out of a sound sleep, so, yeah.
On that same point, if you don't mind, there's also been a guy on a little scooter, kind of moped one that came up on Facebook because he got bumped. One post was talking about someone bumped their son, and another one saying, I was trying to find who we bumped because he pulled in front of us. But I've seen him go up and down Main Street skipping signs and jumping between traffic and stuff, and no lights, you can't see him at night very well. I'm not sure if they use any of that as well.
There it
That goes.
is. There it is.
That's a hard one.
Marie, you all set?
I'm all set.
Chad?
Thank you.
All right, well, pleasure of going last is most of it's already said. That bike thing was something I was gonna bring up, definitely happens in the middle of the night. And it kind of bugs me, 'cause it's like, a lot of it's right in front of the police
Is it
station.
a Harley noise or?
No, it's
It's
10 year,
Noise.
it's 10 year, yeah.
Hot truck.
It's not like, yeah, it's kind of like a Honda.
Sport bike.
And it backfires,
Yeah, it's kind of like a junk, but he horses it pretty good.
yeah.
The other thing I was gonna bring up was Green Up Day. I didn't have very many either, but I had one family actually take down a cardboard homeless shelter and put it in multiple little bags, which I thought was pretty impressive. Gave them extra ice cream slips. I'm hoping this summer, I know we had a crazy summer this summer, but I'm hoping this summer that, and this again touches on Marie, I'm hoping that we get officers on foot quicker. I think it diffuses a lot of situations if they're around the parks, if they're around the businesses. Checking doors at night. See,
There he is.
that even sounds too good for what this guy does.
Well, he's one of them.
You know, I think
It's on his phone.
even if you have a cop walking down Main Street and the guy whips by and you'd be like, oh, it's a red, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, he's not gonna catch him on foot, but, you know, now we have a law enforcement officer that's seen what's going on. And I guess the last thing is Memorial Day. I think the city does a pretty great job on Memorial Day. We get the fire trucks out, I think it's pretty impressive looking. But I've had a couple people wanted to know if we could put, especially downtown, if we could put some little flags on our flagpole or on our light poles. I know sometimes we put things on the back end, on the sidewalk end. I don't know if it's doable this year or not doable this year, it's right around the corner. But it look kind of cool, I think. I know we do a lot for it, so it's not really a complaint, but kind of got brought up. I know we've had issues with the signs we string around town and some wording. Maybe that's a good day to maybe say thank you to our veterans on the sign with a flag or something like that. For a day.
We used to have a flag series on the back.
We got flag banners.
I think we put them up
For the 4th of
for the
July.
4th, right?
4th, Memorial, whatever you want to do. But I know there's some veterans in town that would like to see that.
And I had to go call today for that, that's all. Does anyone who, is leading Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, anyone have a name?
I have a name for Girl Scouts, who might also be Boy Scouts.
And it's
Oh,
just
Deborah,
scouts, it's not
right.
Boy
Deborah
Scouts.
Morton, yeah.
And then for Boy Scouts,
Scouting America. Not Boy Scouts anymore. Scouting America.
but what was it?
I can't remember the name though. I'll see if I can look it up.
If they left their name the same, you would remember that.
Tim, do you have, Deborah might know.
I'll contact Deborah.
Yeah.
So the Legion wanted to get them participating in the parade. Quickly, new restaurant at 14 Star, for those who don't know, it's gonna change their format. It's not as much as a pub as it is a restaurant.
Not grazers anymore?
Not razor, I think it's black radish,
Yeah.
Yep.
is that what it
Yeah,
is?
it's good.
So that's what they're, and
Are
then,
they there now?
what's
They had a
that?
teaser. I don't think they're there yet.
I think it starts this week.
Yeah.
Book here, so let's, we got minutes to approve.
Motion to approve minutes 4/14/25.
Second.
Motion from Tim, second by Eric. All those in favor say
Aye.
aye. Warrants,
Motion to approve warrants 4/30/25.
Second.
motion second. Any questions, comments on them? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, just on the minutes, I recused. I wasn't here. Right, and then motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Katie, second. And we are adjourned at 7:55.
No.
You're still fast.